talk today. I'm live in the mornings. Again, I'm out working at this job, and it's a major hotel chain. We're just doing some cleanup, a few extra bucks. Trying to get on at my university on another job to pay off some back tuition, finish my PhD. And so I've got a few minutes before work, and I just wanted to take a little time. We were talking about ethical AI, and there's a musician out there, there's a famous rapper, and is not one of the most popular in the world, but he's got a good following. Um, put it this way: if you need an education, he can take you to school. He's always getting bigger. So, I like this guy because he's a lot like me in that he's not always walked a straight and narrow. He's made his mistakes in life and he's paid his dues. He's taken his lumps, and he continues to strive to be the person he is. Some of his lyrics I can really relate to, and I think in that maybe we have some things in common. Just so I like this guy. I like some of what he has to say, and he had a video up about AI art. There's this guy, I guess his name's Diplo, and he's talking about we're just going to take the cheapest, best art, and the AI is going to do it. And this rapper, Prof, Professor Prof, he says, look, I make art manually. Like this painting I'm making, I make music. And I just want to take a moment and talk about where we are in the middle of these things, because there is a middle ground here to look at. So, I've been around computer generated art for decades, back in the 90s, or, the 80s, even making art with computers. And whether you're using a mouse or a pen and a tablet, or you're typing things into a keyboard, there's been a lot of controversy over computer generated art from moment one. So, one of the first things I want to talk about is making art. And I had a man, I think it was a man, talk to me online, and they said something like, it's not art if there's not suffering. uh Aravansh, it's good to see you. Hello, hi there. I'm not sure if I got Aravansh. It's good to see you. Hello, welcome to chat. We're talking about AI generated art and computer generated art in general. So the first thing I want to talk about is, you have the old masters, classic painting, and along came photography. And people said, that's not art. You just click a button and it makes a picture. Photography isn't art. And over time, people realize that there's more to the generation of art, to using of a camera to make art than just clicking a button. There's composition, there's lighting, there's the set and the setting, there's angles. These all come into play. And then along came movies. Movies aren't art. Those aren't theater. You can do retakes. It's not live. It's not real theater. And movies got more popular. And then we got into computer generated art. We got special effects. It says that's not art. It's a computer. You're not using animatronics. You're not using puppeteering. And then we've got 3D art, and you've got posing characters and putting clothes on them and adding props to a scene and changing lighting and fog and all this stuff. And that's not art, because you're just clicking a button and making a picture. And now you've gotten into AI. Photoshop's not art. You're just moving things around. You're using somebody else's art to make art. And the same thing was said about electronic music, that you're just taking samples of someone else's music and reusing it to make art. Okay. So, one of the worst things I think I ever heard is a guy said someone needs to suffer for it to be art. And for the life of me, I don't think anybody needs to suffer for someone to enjoy a piece of music or a piece of art. That's a terrible thing to say. So, artificial intelligence uses statistical generation of pixels to recreate something that it's been shown before. And so does the human brain. They work on really similar mathematics. One's biological and neurons, and the other one's on silicon and digital. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of controversy in the next few years over what is or isn't art. And if you go out and you type gibberish into, Deep Dream or Mid Journey or whatever, you're going to get a picture back. And it may be an interesting picture, but is it really art? And then you've got people that are going to go out there and they're going to work on their prompt craft, this generation of art through text, and they're going to pick their verbs, they're going to take their nouns and their subjects, they're going to be very careful about the orders they use and the tags they apply. And over time they will have more and more control over what's created. And I think that's a lot of it. I think you definitely have AI image generation, and some of it's beautiful, but I think as you have more and more direct control over the final outcome of the piece, then you start to approach something more like art. So I don't think that traditional art is any more or less valuable. I definitely think that there's more effort put into it. There's more training. It takes more time. And if you're creating art through traditional methods, through painting, through drawing, through sculpture, because it does something for you as the artist, as a person, I think that's wonderful that you're getting something out of it. But to blatantly say that because someone types something into a prompt and makes a picture, that that's not art, is just like saying photography is an art because all you did was click a button, and 3D software that you pose a character and put clothes on them is an art because you just click a button. That 3D rendering is an art, and that Photoshop is an art, and that electronic music from the likes of Pretty Lights and Panty Raid and the Glitch Mob isn't art because they're just resampling previous art. If you ever watched anybody do scratching live, if you ever watched any live DJ, you will see that there's definitely art there. And so you have to take a step back and say, what was the process involved? And you have to remember that we've been through this before. I watched a video, and I'll try to link it in the description later, that there is a picture. It's a movie. It's colonial America, and some people are walking down a street, and there's horses and a crowd and buildings, and the camera pans out, and they show the creation of this, and all of the buildings are billboarded. They're just a flat plane with a picture on it. All of the crowds are composited through the computer. The horses aren't real. They were filmed elsewhere. This is all done on a computer. Nothing about what looks like a real live action video is real. It's all done with green screens. The only two people in it that are filmed are the people talking. Everything else is composited through a computer. And so if that's generated with 3D or special effects or 3D rendering or light mapping or with compositing other video that was taken from different people, it still makes a cool movie. And so it's definitely hard to say what is art. We can say what is aesthetically pleasing. Aesthetics is an entire branch of philosophy. There's a whole science behind it, the rule of thirds, composition, chords, scale of 12, all this stuff that creates things that are aesthetically pleasing. So yes, it is easy to go to a computer and sit down today with today's tools and type in 5 words and get a pretty picture. That becomes art when you have intent of creation, the intent of and control. So when somebody goes in and they're spending hours making videos, they spend hours and hours and hours making these pictures, and they're putting in prompts, and they're getting things back, and they're feeding them back into the AI, and they're masking things off and saying fix this or add that. Yeah, you start to approach the artistic process, and you get back something that required real emotion and real involvement. And I think that's the thing that's missing. So when people go out there and say people are just going to pay for the latest, greatest, whatever, and whatever's the best looking picture, it's your intent. Are you making a rave flyer? Are you making a garage sale flyer that's visually catching and you just want something to look at? Are you making a wallpaper for your computer, a background for your phone? That's all you want as a poster? Sure, that's use whatever. Are you trying to create something that captures your emotion at that moment as an artist? Well, you may want to take some time to use real tools to learn to draw. There's absolutely a benefit to that. So I definitely think that there's going to be a lot of controversy over this in the next few years as we approach. Something I see very likely to happen is tools like Photoshop or Krita or the GIMP. You're going to come in and you're going to be able to mask off an area and say, make me a barrel or make me a bird. And it's going to make a picture in that spot of that thing. It will generate what you're asking for in that place. And then in other time, as you approach more professional use of this, as the professionals start to use it and they start to say, hey, this is great because I can come in and I can make the background this and the foreground that, um, then you're going to start to see things like that. You're going to start to see more integration of AI tools into the standard tool chain like Krita or Photoshop. So um, it's definitely something to pay attention to. But no, I don't think it's automatically art just because you used AI. I don't think that it's automatically art because you used pens and pencils. If you're really good at just creating these, geometric patterns are aesthetically pleasing. Are they necessarily art? If I take and I put dots on a paper and I make lines between them and I color in regions, I did that manually, but all I'm really doing is coloring in regions and making something that's nice to look at. Is that really art? Okay. And so there's a corollary there. So um, the tools you use, whether it's traditional tools, whether it's 3D, whether it's computer and digital, whether it's AI, and your intent versus the amount of effort you put into it, I think these are all things that need to be considered. Whether it's a picture, whether it's a song. I have an album I made. I'm not publishing it. I might put it on YouTube at some point. I went out to like 15 AI sites one year. I had used the AI briefly. I make character photos for games I play, just for my character in the game, so I have something to stick on there. I was playing the Aliens RPG where you're shooting the xenomorphs, and I needed a picture of my character. So when it said AI, make me a scientist that looks like this, and it made me a little picture. I made 4 or 5 of them, and I picked the one I like best. And I don't really consider that to be art. That's a picture that I made for a game for casual use, just so that oh, my guy looks like this, right? Just something simple. And I could have gone out and scoured Google Images for something, but it worked well enough for what I needed it for. I'm not trying to publish that. I'm not trying to make money on that. That's something casual use for personal, and I think that's a perfectly fine use of AI. Uh, but there's definitely going to be people out there that are wanting to make a video game or make a movie, and the AI is going to enable them to create art at a scale they would never be able to afford. They're going to be able to create things that they could never do otherwise. Some people may be limited in their talent or ability to gain skill. You might have somebody who's disabled that just really can't draw. They could spend 20 or 30 years and they're never going to be as good at making a picture as what they can do on the computer. I'm not saying they shouldn't try and that there's nothing to be gained from that process, but maybe they don't want to. They don't want to spend 30 years of their life to be a mediocre artist. Okay? And that's something to be considered. But it's going to allow them to make movies. It's going to allow them to make art and comic books in a way that they would not be able to before. And so striving for personal development, I definitely think is important. But no, what I was saying is I'd gone out, I'd made a character for a game I was playing just as a character. And I found that it could make hands without making the errors. It draw the fingers right. It did well at this. And I said, AI, can you draw a triangle? So 5 years ago, I tried to get the AI to draw a triangle, and I got the bizarrest things back. The AI could not draw a triangle. It could make me a picture of a planet and a spaceship and all this other cool stuff. It could not draw a simple triangle. Just didn't know how to do it. And it finally did a couple of years back, about a year ago. I could get it to do that. And so I went out and I tried some music and I made music with it. And I got to make some pretty cool music. I'm not a musician, but I could describe the music I wanted to hear. Some jazzy, fusion, beach, surf guitar kind of thing, just kind of a mix of stuff that I wanted. And I would equate that to having a studio album done by studio musicians. You can go to a music studio if they do recording, and you can say, hey, can you bring me in some studio musicians to do work for hire? I could hire some kids in college that know how to play guitar and play in a band, play band instruments, and they can come out and say, hey, just do a jam session with me. We're just making some music. I want some background music that I can have royalty free. This is work for hire. And it would have cost me a couple grand. I don't have a couple grand laying around to pay that. And I'm not trying to go make money with this album, but I've produced it now. I have this album that I made, 60 minutes or so of music created with online tools, or AI tools, and it saved me a few bucks. Now, if I were to go on and I were to remix that and resample it, if I were to go on and clean it up and turn it into full compositions, add lyrics to it, it has no words in it. If I were to do something with that further, I'm using it as a base. But if I just want to use it as background music for my website, I don't see a problem with that. I'm not stealing from anybody because I didn't have anything to give anybody to begin with. You understand? And so if you go out there and you're making art for your own personal use, or you want to put it on a calendar and you can use the AI tools to do this, good for you. If you have no other way to make art, if you can bridge the gap and get going and get started, I think that's great. Um, but no, it doesn't all have to be about the struggle. Great art does not come from suffering. It does come from practice, and you have to learn to use AI tools as well as anything else. The learning curve may be lower, it may be more accessible to people, but I think in a way that's a good thing. And I'm not saying that we should all just use AI to go make art or music. I think that there's definitely something to be said for, I sit around and say, man, I really wish I'd have kept up cello from when I was a kid. I took cello in fifth grade, and I only took it in fifth grade, and I kind of wish I'd kept it up to continue to learn that instrument, because I'd be a mediocre cello player now. Years later, I'd be an average player. I don't think I'd be great at it, but I'd know how to play. And if you learned how to play guitar in high school and you can still play guitar, that's great. Even if you're not a famous guitarist, if you're just you can play a song at a party or whatever, that's great. But I don't think it's okay for somebody who's traditionally trained in one form of creating art or music to come in and say, well, that thing you're doing is easier than what I did, so it doesn't count. That's not fair. That's not right. And like I said, it's the same thing as when the painters came along and said photography is an art. And then the photographer said Photoshop's not art. And the digital artist said, well, that's 3D, so it's not art. Okay? For everybody to come in now and say that's not art because it's easier is the same thing we've been saying for over 100 years. Technology is going to change, the tools are going to change, and you're going to get out what you put in. So no, I wanted to touch on that. I don't think we should all go out and just use AI to make art. I think we should all continue to strive to do the things that we want to do in life and be good at what we want to be good at. I think that we should, if you want to be a great painter, or if you get something out of painting, even if you don't, hey, I'm never going to be a Picasso, I'm never going to be Rembrandt, but I still enjoy painting. I get something out of painting by doing this. That's great and that's wonderful for you, but don't knock somebody who gets something out of and enjoys using prompt craft on Midjourney or Deep Dream. If it's making you feel better as a person, if it's helping you express yourself, and keep doing it, keep making art, whatever your tools are, whether they're traditional, whether they're digital, whether they're new generative AI. So it is a middle ground, and it's going to be a lot of things. Now remember, my video yesterday was on AI ethics. No, you should not have filters that go out there and take art from artists and then make a picture that looks just like what they would make in their style and take money out of their pocket. That's not right either. So it's going to be interesting to see where we go with this in the future. And I will be on. I've got to get some shoes on. I got to run in. I got to put my work shoots on. I got to go in and work for the day. But I did want to take a minute this morning to talk about AI and AI art and what counts as art versus what not counts as art and whatnot. And it comes down to this: follow your dreams. And if it brings you joy, keep doing it. You're not hurting anybody else. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, please keep doing it. So I like the tools. I'm sitting here, I've got a couple of game projects, and I just don't have $650 laying around to pay a pixel artist right now. I just don't have it in my pocket today to go out and pay a pixel artist. And so if I'm going to do a game jam and I'm going to do a little something and I want to use some AI generated art to make a background texture, to make a little pixel guy, to make a whatever, I think that should be fine. That's okay to a point, but I don't think that we should lose all our pixel artists, because there's definitely going to be times when I'm going to want something that's custom done, that's hand done, that the AI is not going to figure out. It's not going to know how to do what I want to do. It's not going to match my style. It's not going to be able to work with me iteratively that way. We're a long way off from that. So there are places I would use, You can go out and you can take a set of math, you can take noise function, Perlin noise, or different colors of noise, and you can run them through filters, and you can make a grass or a stone or a dirt texture. You can make brick textures using math. So you can just take some numbers and put it in a program, and it's going to make you a picture. And so that's one thing to look at there. We have procedural generation or algorithmic generation of art. And you can do the same thing with music to a point. And somewhere in there, the line between procedurally generated or mathematically generated images and artificial intelligence generated images is really blurry. It's a very thin line. So depending on how you make your tools, depending on what you do, um, right? It's going to be up to the viewer. It's going to be up to your audience whether or not they think what you made is art or beautiful, or that you just threw some numbers at the screen and typed something into a box. And there's plenty of image generators out there that you can do that with math. You can just, there's whole worlds, there's games full of entire worlds that were created just with math. Somebody had to program that. And somebody had to program all of that AI. They had to program those computers. They had to do it to go out and get that data and turn it into an algorithm that could be processed and turn that back into an image or a song. So when I made my little album last year, like I said, it's a little studio album. I got it. It's nice music. It's nice to listen to. No, I don't think of myself as a great composer. I think of myself more as a producer or a client that said, I want this. And I feel like every programmer that stayed up till 3 in the morning typing on a keyboard, and every musician that was ever sampled to train that AI made that album. So it's going to be, you got to have credit where it's due. So that's kind of my stance on AI and AI art. Yes, it is art, and the degree to which it's art is going to be as varied as, you know, did you scribble on paper and color it in? It was a Picasso did that once. He made a scribble on a paper, wasn't anything. It was a doodle, it was $1 million, right? Is graffiti art? Well, it depends on what it's graffiti of and how much effort was put into it. So, hey, I'll see YouTube. That's just kind of what I want to do there. I just wanted to touch bases there a little bit and answer this. I might add this on some people just to get that going. But I've been asked this question before, and I want to make my stance clear. Yeah, I think AI can produce art. It's going to depend on the level of involvement of the creator and whether or not they, if you're good enough to go in and type 5 words and get it to say, make the picture exactly that you want, then you're good at that. But I think that there's definitely people that go out there and they iteratively take an image, they run it through the AI, they say, I want a picture of a sunset and a tree and a bird, and it gives them, and they make 10 of these, and they pick one out and they put it back into the AI, and they mask things off, and they say, well, I want this area to be different, or I want that, and they keep going back through this. Just because they're typing in a description and not moving a mouse or a digitizer or a light pen doesn't make them less of an artist. The tool you use doesn't make you less of an artist. It's about what's your heart and your intent. So, like I said, photography can't be art, right? You just push a button and take a picture. 3D can't be art. You just clicked a button on a computer, made a picture, you didn't draw that, right? And movies aren't real. So, see you.